What's up everybody? Today, as you can see, we are talking about FPV drones. And you can see all these drones that we have here. This is not going to be so much of an intro to FPV drones for beginners or anything like that, though I might consider making one of those videos depending on the interest that I get on this one. Today I'm just going to be talking about the specific drones that I use, a little bit about FPV drones in general, but the specific drones that I use for my work, because sometimes I get questions about what I use for this and what I use for that, so this is going to be the reference video for that. So let's dive right in. First of all, we're going to talk about why you should fly FPV drones, what kind of advantages, what kind of things, what kind of video are we getting out of these FPV drones. Now, first of all, FPV stands for first person view, so you fly them with these goggles right here and you feel like you're the actual drone. So you may notice drone footage or video footage in recent movies, the Michael Bay movie, car commercials. It's starting to pop up a lot more in many uses, including big budget films and such things as that. And it's sort of trending at the moment. In the last couple of years, it's been getting more and more popular with the YouTubers, but FPV drones have been around for quite a while in the racing community, which there still is the racing side of things. Some of the shots people are getting these days with FPV drones are just starting up really wide and coming down to a main character, really low shots, going under things, shooting gaps, things like the one takes, the famous one takes where you just follow a character, or it's sort of a video tour of a grand location, all done with allegedly one take. Sometimes they're creatively stitched together and they're not exactly one takes, but they appear to be and mostly are. But there's a lot of things you can do with FPV drones that you can't do with regular DJI drones. DJI drones, they're fun and all, but once you get used to flying them, their use is very limited. They have a very specific use, but it's limited. That classic flying forward, slowly tilting upward, opening shot in movies. It's kind of been done, and so people are sort of experimenting and seeing what else can be done with drones, and FPV drones specifically offer something that DJI drones can't do. And now people are doing a lot crazier things like putting gimbals on FPV drones and cinema cameras and all this crazy stuff. I personally am not ready for any of that yet, but FPV drones, needless to say, they have a lot of potential, and there's a great future for FPV drones. You can build these drones for long range flying. So if you, for example, like I'd like to take these drones on my trip and send them off into the mountains, and you have to build them a certain way so you can use them for long range, but something that you wouldn't really be able to get unless you have a helicopter, or if you hike out to these locations and you can do a shot diving, what they call mountain surfing, diving down waterfalls and coming up down through a valley, and all these kind of crazy things that you can do with these long-range drones. And it's pretty insane what can be done and what people are doing. Lastly, as I touched on before, you fly these drones with the goggles, so just the flying experience itself is pretty exciting. You get your adrenaline running. It's like, you know, I hear metaphors, jokes all the time because you have the goggles on, but it's like an immersive experience where you feel like you're the drone. It's like a high stakes video game in real life because you're actually flying around and there is the risk of crashing and losing your drone. But just the fact that you feel like you're flying, the experience is like nothing else. You have to really try it and do it to understand what I'm talking about. As far as my use of FPV drones, like I mentioned, I've been using them in my regular job, video production. A lot of these boats we're shooting, we use one of these specific drones I'll show you later. And then just regular things that you would get a drone shot of. You get an additional FPV drone shot because you can do just different things, different dynamic angles, and just ways of putting the video footage together. Additionally, like I mentioned, I've been using them on my travel films. I usually bring like 3 drones of the FPV style with me when I travel, and I have like one long range and then one backup and one just my regular drone for anything that's not too far away. And I've been incorporating this footage and working with it and finding out how to use it, because that's the most exciting thing about FPV drones, is that they're not that new, but they're relatively new to the video production side of things. And so learning how to use the footage, shooting it, and then editing it later, you kind of become more creatively inspired, let's say. So it's definitely inspired me getting into FPV drones, and it's just been an amazing journey the last, been about a year and a half for me. Now, enough of the intro. Let's get into these specific drones I have here, what their uses are, and why I have so many, because it is seemingly a problem with FPV drone pilots. You kind of want backups of things, and then you buy a new drone, and you end up with this here, and this is probably considered light in terms of things. But let's start over here on my left, your right. We have the Cinewhoop category. So as I mentioned, those one-take shots that you see, whether it's flying through that famous bowling alley shot, the ESPN tour, they've been using it in a lot of different uses. Basically, anything that you're flying around people or indoors, you're gonna use a Cinewhoop. Now, as you can see, these drones look a little bit different from these over here. This is my new primary, and this is my backup. This one is freaking amazing because it flies just like one of these, which a Cinewhoop normally flies slower. It's a little clunkier in the air because it's got the ducts protected, which of course, if you're flying around people, you wanna not have exposed propellers. These you can't actually fly over people unless it's sub 250 grams, which I don't have one of those yet because I haven't really found the use for it, but I probably will be getting one in the near future. So this is the Cinelog35, pretty awesome. You mount a GoPro on that. This used to be my primary Cinewhoop, but now that I know how this one flies, I'm just surprised that I flew this one at all because it's super heavy and clunky, and it's got a lot more protection on the ducts. And some people start ripping this stuff away and just making it a little bit lighter and fly a little bit better, basically. But this is for your indoor one takes, anything like in conferences or something like that is where I use these drones right here. Now, the bread and butter of FPV drones are gonna be your 5 inches here. So named because of the size of the propeller. They come in different frames, and some of these are actually what they call bind and fly, where I bought them pre-built and then sort of modified them from there. This one I actually built completely from scratch, but let me just go over these real quick. This is what I call my bando basher. So when you're practicing FPV drone, and flying FPV drones requires a lot of practice. Let's not go lightly on that. It requires at least 30 hours in the sim, and then you start crashing and you buy one in real life, and it's quite an experience learning how to fly FPV, but you want to be always pushing yourself and trying difficult things and difficult tricks and shooting gaps and all that. And so this drone, I do not use it for anything video production related. It takes a beating, you know, it's the Gladiator. This one I actually fully built from scratch. Is the first and only one that I've just bought all the parts separately and put together. I'm not really well versed in how to tune drones. Tuning is how they fly, the response time. There's so many factors that I don't really know about. Pitch of the propellers, your motor selection, and the tune. But for me, I just need a drone that I can just beat up, and it's got a lot of 3D printed TPU over here, which is very common in the FPV world. So this is my super drone, the Bando Basher. It really takes a beating, but it's where I try my difficult tricks and fly in just locations where I wouldn't want to mess up these drones that I keep more for production side of things. Back here, I have a 5-inch. And actually, these 3 drones are the same model. They're from iFlight. They're the iFlight Nazgul. It's kind of their most popular drone. It's probably the best one to get started with because you buy a bind and fly and it's perfectly tuned out of the box. And it's actually why I have so many, because I wasn't well versed in how to tune, which I still am not, but I just like the way they fly out of the box. So I ended up buying 3, and I have 3 different ones for 3 different purposes. What's special about this one is that this one is analog. Now, I'm not gonna go in so much about digital versus analog, but overall it seems like people are using digital more for video production and anything that's really high budget, because the video that you get in the goggles, the clarity is just completely different. Analog is like looking at a VHS tape from the 90s. So the reason why I have one analog still is because there are some situations where if you're flying near certain antennas, I've noticed that the range on the digital drones is just dramatically reduced. I was flying in San Francisco. I was up in the hills, Twin Peaks, and this drone actually right here, the range it had was like when I got more than 20 feet away, the signal started dropping because I was flying near that giant antenna. So I keep this analog as kind of a backup. I don't really use it day to day, but it's sort of a backup. It's there in case I need it if I'm in a specific situation. This is my main 5-inch that I use for production. I don't bash it at all, though it was my main drone when I bought it, so it has been bashed. But as of now, it's used only for jobs. I want to make sure I have a drone that is in good condition. I don't want to have something that like this has been beat up and, you know, they fly well, but if I crash and didn't notice that something was broken and then I have an incident and I crash on a job, it's not really a good thing. So this one is treated pretty nicely and it's used for a lot of the video production stuff. I fly over water with it, though, you know, I don't have like a floating device like this one. It's a very special drone I'll get into in a second. But this is my basic 5-inch tuned out of the box from the bind and fly setup from iFlight, and is my main production drone. Now this drone over here is pretty special. So as I mentioned, I shoot a lot of boats, and when you're flying around water, I've used this drone before, but I conformal coat all my drones. Conformal coating means you put this silicone coating on the electronics where it can get splashed, and theoretically it can be dunked, and it won't be and there won't be any damage done to the circuits. The motors are actually waterproof as is because there's no really electronics in there, just magnets. But I have everything conformal coated just as a peace of mind. This one is a little bit different because, one, as you can see, it has a floaty. So as it has gone into the water before, it'll float because obviously these are heavy drones, and once you have the GoPro on here, if it didn't have this, it would sink. So that's the first thing it has. The second thing, it's designed, it's an actual Nazgul like these other two, like I mentioned, but it has been modified with a special kit from Deep Designs. Deep Designs is a company that makes a waterproofing kit that is more robust than the conformal coating, because the conformal coating, like I said, it can handle a spray here and there, but I wouldn't be comfortable dunking something that is conformal coated just because, you know, if you think about the video transmitter, you can't really conformal coat that. So this one actually has these little sealed packets with a special kind of putty that surrounds the flight controller and the ESC, two components of an FPV drone, which I might get into on another video. But those components are sealed in this special packet. The video transmitter, the Caddx Vista here, is also sealed. The GPS is sealed as well. It's just heat shrinked actually. And then we have our antenna back here, and the camera actually has a special treatment where you use this sort of silicone, not the conformal coating, but a different kind of silicone that you put on the boards, and then you kind of close it back up, and it's pretty much sealed. This has actually gone into the water a couple times and really had no problems. I have replaced the ESC once because just a bad job I did putting it together. And otherwise, this has gotten a lot of spray, and I shoot all the really dynamic boat stuff with this. It's got the GPS module, like I said, for safety, because if I'm flying in long distances and flying over the water and I lose video or I use radio transmission, I don't want it to just drop. It'll actually return home or around where you took off, basically. So technically, this one does most of my production work because I do shoot a lot of boats. And I've only dunked it twice, like I said, but just the fact that everything is super sealed means I could fly really low. I'm doing all these shots getting almost under the bow of the boat, the front of the boat, and just things that I wouldn't be comfortable doing with a regular drone, even if it was conformal coated. It's just that peace of mind that if I do go into the water, if I do get a heavy splash, really nothing's gonna happen. You just rinse it out with fresh water or distilled water. So this is pretty awesome. And this is probably the one I get the most questions about because I have some footage out there. I'll put some over this video where I'm actually in the spray behind a boat and all this crazy stuff that only this drone can do. It's quite unique. I don't know too many people that have it. Well, nobody locally, but obviously it's a company that makes it, so there are some in existence, but around here, I'm pretty much the only person that has this. So that's my waterproof drone. Over here on the right, you'll see something a little bit bigger. Now this is called a 7-inch drone because of the propeller sizes. So this is my long range drone. So when I do these trips, and like I mentioned, I'll send the drone off into the mountains, I use this drone. It doesn't fly as quick and snappy as the 5-inch because obviously it's heavier. You put a bigger battery. You do get a longer flight time, so if you're going off somewhere pretty far, you want to be able to go and come back and not lose the drone. So you can put a larger battery on here. I actually have it currently set up for digital. Now, for long range stuff, analog is preferred as long as, and you're always going to be within line of sight because analog has a higher range, and for a variety of reasons, analog is better for long range. I have actually converted this to digital because, as you can see, there's an interesting mount here. Now, this mount is for a 35mm camera, an Olympus camera, and I've been doing aerial film photography. It's not originally my idea. I do have to give credit to Jace Film, who put a little video together, and you basically attach a servo that triggers the shutter, and since it's a point and shoot camera, it'll load the next slide of film, and you can basically take photos, film photos in the air with this drone. It's a little bit of a technique to it because you have to go up and tilt down. But yeah, I converted it to digital because flying around buildings, downtown, Brickell, the analog doesn't really handle what they call high multipath environments where the signal is sort of bouncing around everywhere. Digital is a lot better for that. So when I go on my next trip, I'll probably convert this back to analog, but for the meantime, I've been using it as a digital quad and it has worked out great. So that's a wrap for this video. I didn't want to get too detailed, even though I think I did, but not so much about the FPV system. But like I said, I might make a video later if there is a response and people who want to see that. But these are basically the drones that I use for my jobs and for my travel films. I'll put some clips up so you can have an idea of what each drone shoots. So other than that, once you get me going on this FPV stuff, I can talk about it forever. So let's just cut the video right here. Hope you enjoy this, hope you learn something. And like I said, if there is interest, if there is demand, I'll put together a sort of beginner's guide to FPV because I do get a lot of questions about it. Obviously there's videos out there, but when people ask me specifically, I feel like I have to make a video about it, just like I made this video right here. So be sure to like and subscribe for more travel content, photography, tutorials, FPV related content, and all that good stuff. And I will see you on the next one.